With practice, you will get good at noticing when they are trying to mess with you using the idea of an appositive. Now, you use appositives in your own writing all the time. Basically, it's when you're writing something, you introduce an idea, and then you use 2 commas to insert an extra clause that maybe describes that idea in some way. And so that kind of resembles maybe choice A, maybe choice B. So we see those kind of like clauses here that are maybe introducing the name of this person. So let's see though, we got to be careful. We don't always use the commas. It really just depends on the circumstances. All right, this is a long sentence. Yes, okay. In 1937, Chinese-American screen actor Anna May Wong, who had portrayed numerous villains and secondary characters but never a heroine, finally got a starring role in Paramount Pictures' Daughter of Shanghai, a film that critic Stina Chin claims expanded the range of possibilities for Asian images on screen. There's a trap here. They want you to pick A or B because they know they're like, oh, we've introduced her as a critic, and then we're giving her name, which is extra information. But this is not how this works. The critic is kind of just like her title. Like it's kind of like we're saying like, Uncle Bill or, Aunt Stina in this case, right? Like it's just kind of a name, but it's part of her name. It's part of the way we're introducing her. So it's really her. She is the topic here. So we cannot say her name as extra information. So it's either going to be C or D. Part of me wants to say D because I know that normally we would put a comma before a quote, but there's no reason for this comma here after Chin. So that leaves us with C. We kind of have no choice here. Trying to think why we don't need the comma. It's kind of sneaky. A film that critic Stina Chin claims expanded the range. Okay, so the real reason is when we do those commas before a quote, usually it's like the quote is like an add-on. And so we kind of are just like, we've already kind of concluded our thought, and then the quote is an additional piece that just like lets us understand the context, right? So yeah, this is tricky. So C is the answer here, but it's kind of like the quote here is just continuing the sentence, and it just so happens that what we want to say about the film, or what what we want to say about the film, is something that we are kind of taking directly out of another person's mouth. Oh, gosh. So the most common place you'd experience this situation is if you were writing like a research paper for school. Okay. So sometimes we have a quote, like you're thinking, where we have the comma and then the quote. But most of the time when you're writing a research paper well, you are pulling things out of the primary sources and just using those words in your own kind of, in your own sentences. So you're not pausing to say like, oh, this source said. You are just kind of incorporating it into your own sentence as if it's kind of what you're saying, but you're using the quotes and then, the citation to kind of say that you're getting this from somewhere else. And in those cases, we don't use quotes. Maybe I'll make a longer we don't use commas, sorry. Maybe I'll make a longer video on this. I think it's too complicated and I need to come up with too many like pre-written examples to really explain it here. But the SAT strategy here is even if you really thought that comma needed to be there, the other commas don't. The other commas are provably wrong. So we kind of have this situation where, it's like, well, maybe I would put a comma, but every other comma I know cannot be there. So I'm going to get rid of them. And that's okay. Sometimes there are multiple ways to punctuate a sentence in English. There's some choice that the author would have. But obviously on a multiple choice test, we don't have the ability to kind of make a choice. There's always going to be just one correct answer. So you might end up kind of doing it in a way that's a little different than you yourself would do it, only because that's the only option that works. So just get used to that. That may end up happening on some of these grammar questions.